Chapter 3, Parts B and C of Aces Up by Covington, Clarke. Night Raiders. 2 weeks later, orders came down concentrating several pursuit, observation, and bombing groups in the neighborhoods of Commercy and Nancy. The members of the squadrons to which McGee and Larkin had been detailed were feverish with excitement. Operations and armament officers were busy with the duties incident to making all planes ready for combat. This could mean but one thing: action. 3 nights after the move, McGee and Larkin sat at a late dinner in one of the little cafes on the main street of the small French town. They were discussing the progress of their work, and each was heatedly contending that his own group was superior in every way. "Just come over and watch my flight do formation work," Larkin urged. "They'll open your eyes." "You'd better open your own eyes. I have watched you. We were up in the sun this morning, 5,000 feet above you, and watched you for half an hour. A fine bunch you have. We could have smothered you like a blanket. Have you ever shown them anything about looking in the sun for enemy planes?" Larkin's face evidenced his chagrin. "Are you kidding me?" "Not much. We kept right along above you, but in the sun. I'll admit they did good work. But oh, how blind. Boy, we're not too far back to get jumped on. There have been fights farther back from the lines than this. You know Fritz dearly loves to raid dromes where new squadrons are in training. Believe me, their spy system is perfect. I'd be willing to wager my right eye that they know these groups are stationed in this area, how long they have been in France, and just what types of planes we are using. They've the best spy system in the world. You know how many times they have raided green squadrons. They figure it puts the wind up a bunch of inexperienced men. So keep your eye peeled. And if you want to see something pretty, come over and watch my gang. They're ready for combat work right now. Except Siddons." Larkin looked up in surprise. "I thought you told me he knew more about the planes and about flying than any of the others." "He does. But he can't or won't keep in formation. He cuts out and goes joyriding." "Seems to me I remember someone else who used to do that same little stunt," Larkin said, smiling reminiscently. McGee flushed. "Yes, I suppose I did, but not in training. I never cut formation until you saw something that looked like meat. Don't try to kid me, Red. You've dragged me into too many dogfights. Do you think I have forgotten the day we were out having a look-see, 5 of us, and spotted 5 albatrosses below? Bingo! Down you went like a shot, and the rest of us had to follow to keep you from being made into mincemeat. Talk about being blind. All the time a bigger flock of Fokkers were in the sun above us, and they came down like wolves in the fold. Fellow, you had your little faults. Don't be too hard on Siddons." Cutting formation to get in a fight and cutting to go joyriding are 2 different things. If it were anyone else but Siddons, I'd ask Cowan to ground him." "You like him?" "Emphatically, no. And he knows it. That's why I hesitate to make an example of him. He would think that I was satisfying a grudge. Besides, he has some sort of a drag with someone. Cowan thinks he's a great flyer. He is, too. Knows more about both the technical and practical side of the game than any of the others. That's what's wrong with him. He's so self-satisfied, so arrogant, and so cocksure of every word he utters and every movement he makes. He is the coldest fish I ever met. He reminds me of someone, but I can't remember who it is. Sometimes I think he is... Listen, what's that?" McGee's question went unanswered as the shrill blasts of the air raid siren shattered the peace of the village with its frenzied warning. It moaned, deep-throated, then became panic-stricken and wailed tremulously in the higher registers. It was a warning to all to seek the comparative safety of the abri, which the town had constructed against just such an emergency. The café emptied quickly, but even the quickest followed on the heels of McGee and Larkin, who, once outside, ran briskly down the street toward the house where they were billeted. They halted at the drive entrance to gaze upward as great searchlights began playing upon the dark, inverted bowl of the heavens. The long, shifting beams of light were accusing fingers seeking to point out the unwelcome, stealthy, nocturnal sky prowlers. Listen! McGee gripped Larkin's arm. Sure enough, from the east, and high above, came the sound of German motors, a sound unmistakable by anyone who had once heard their unsynchronized drone. It rose and fell, like the hurried snoring of a giant made restless by nightmare. The sound was drawing nearer. Doubtless it had been heard by the soldiers manning the searchlights, for the beams now swept restlessly across the eastern sky. To the eastward, 2 or 3 kilometers, an anti-aircraft battery opened fire, and from aloft came the dull poof of the exploding shells. Vain, futile effort. It was only the angry thundering of admitted helplessness. One chance in a million. The motors droned on, coming nearer and nearer. Excited townspeople in wooden sabots clattered down the streets seeking shelter. Fear-stricken mothers and fathers spoke sharply to their little broods as they hustled them along. "Buzz," Red said. "It's dollars to doughnuts. They're coming here to lay some eggs on our drome, just to put the wind up these boys. Remember what I told you a few minutes ago." Larkin was more hopeful. "I guess not," he said. "Headed for some supply base or ammunition dump farther in, would be my guess. But if they are coming here, there's little we can do about it. It's up to the anti-aircraft boys." McGee mused. "I wonder." A motorcycle with sidecar running without lights came popping down the street. Without hesitation, McGee ran out into the middle of the street, waving his arms and shouting wildly. The motorcycle swerved sharply, missed the dancing, gesticulating figure, and skidded to a stop. "Say, what's eatin' you, soldier?" demanded the irate American motorcycle orderly. For answer, McGee sprang into the sidecar and barked a few crisp, sharp orders that brooked no hesitation. The responsive little motor roared its staccato eagerness as the machine lurched forward, leaving Larkin speechless and wondering. "What do you know about that?" he mused. "Now what can that little shrimp be up—" He hesitated, struck by the same thought, he felt sure, that had plunged McGee into such sudden action. Then he began shouting for the driver of their motor car. "Martins! Martins! Oh, Martins!" Blast the fellow, doubtless he was already in some place of security. "Martins! Oh, Martins!" A door flew open, letting out a beam of light, as Martins came out, clad only in his underclothes and yawning prodigiously. "Did you call, sir?" he asked, blinking foolishly as he studied the flashing rays of the sky-searching lights. "Yes. Get the car. Snappy now." "Yes, sir. Just as soon as I can get on some clothes." "Hang the clothes. Get the car. And set the road afire between here and the drome. Move. Don't stand there blinking like a blooming owl." Martins sped around the house, a white-clad figure racing barefooted for the car and muttering under his breath every time his flying feet struck bits of gravel and sharp stones. The sound of the airplane motors was now much nearer. The siren was still screaming its fright. Anti-aircraft guns were futilely belching steel into the air, and the searchlights were getting jumpy in their haste to locate the intruders and hold them in a beam of light. Martins, with Larkin seated at his side, hurled the car through the narrow streets and out to the airdrome with a daring recklessness known only to war-trained chauffeurs who could push a car faster without lights than most people would care to ride in broad daylight. But their speed was slow compared to that made by the surprised motorcycle orderly who had thundered off with McGee. And when Larkin sprang from the car as it screeched to a stop at the edge of the drome, his ear caught the sound of a Clarke motor pounding under an advanced throttle as it lifted a plane from the ground at the far end of the dark field. An excited, buzzing group of pilots and mechanics were huddled together on the tarmac near the circus tent that served as a hangar, and still more men were emerging hastily from the humpbacked black steel elephants that served them as quarters. Larkin ran toward the group near the hangar entrance. "Where's McGee?" he shouted, knowing the answer but hoping for some word that would give the lie to what his ears told him. He knew that the plane which had now swung back over the field and was roaring directly above as it battled for altitude was none other than McGee's bulky little Camel. But no one answered him. They merely stared, as men who have just witnessed a feat of daring too noble for words, or as girls who face an impending tragedy and are too horror-stricken for action. "Where's McGee?" Larkin shouted again. "Don't stand there like a bunch of yaps. You'll be getting a setting of high-explosive eggs here in a minute. Don't you hear that siren? Those Boche planes? Where's McGee, I ask you?" Yancey stepped from the group and pointed up. He said in the slow drawl that was doubly maddening at such a moment, "He blew in here a few minutes ago like a Texas Panhandle twister, ordered the greaseballs to roll his plane on the line, and was off before she was good and warm. I reckon—" Larkin did not wait to learn what Yancey reckoned. He dashed toward the hangar, shouting orders as he ran. Major Cowan stepped from the hangar, barring the way. "Just a minute, Lieutenant. What is it you want?" "What do I want? I want a plane on the line, quick." "No. Lieutenant McGee took off before we knew what it was all about. It is madness. You can't have—" He stopped speaking to listen. From high above, and a little to the east, came the throbbing sound of German motors that in a few more seconds would be over the airdrome. Indeed, they might be circling now, getting their bearing and making sure of location. At that moment, one of the large motor-mounted searchlights near the hangar began combing the sky. "Go tell those saps to cut that light," Larkin shouted, hoping that the Major would be stampeded into action that would provide the slenderest chance for him to get the mechanics to roll a spad to the line before Cowan could know what was happening. "Better cut it. If the others can't find him, this one can't. It will only serve as a path of light for one of those babies up there to slide down and leave you some presents you don't want." Major Cowan was not one to go legging it about on errands. Besides, searchlights were provided for just such uses. Then, too, he rather suspected Larkin's motives, and Larkin realized this. "Please let me have one of those spads, Major," he pleaded. "Can't you understand? McGee and I are buddies. With two of us up there, we might turn him back." "No, it is too hazardous. This squadron is still in training. We are not trained as night flyers, and certainly are not prepared to give combat to a flight of bombers." Larkin's anger smashed through his long training. All rank faded from his mind. "Not trained, eh? Major Cowan, that freckle-faced kid up there is a night-flying fool, and I'm his twin brother. Get out of my way." "Oh, greaseballs. Hey, you Ack-Emmas, roll out one of those spads and—" "Lieutenant," Cowan barked, "you forget yourself. If you want to do night fighting, go over to your own group and use your own plane." "You forget yourself. I am still in command here." From aloft came the momentary stutter of two machine guns. Ah, McGee, testing and warming his guns as he climbed. Oh, the fool, the precious daring fool. Larkin sat down on the tarmac, kerplunk. Let 'em raid. What mattered it? He rather hoped one of them would be accurate enough to plant a bomb on the top of Cowan's head. "Yes, you are in command," he said rather limply. "But why didn't you stop McGee? And since you are in command, in heaven's name, tell that light crew to cut that light. It would be just their fool blundering luck to spot McGee and hold him for the Archies." End of Chapter 3, Parts B and C.